Hi guys, my name is Kelly, and I think it's finally time that I came on and introduced myself and just kind of let you know what I'm up to with this YouTube channel. So I first learned about number knitting back in 2001, I think, maybe 2000. I had heard about it from an article in Knitters magazine, and that it was based on a patented knitting method, a modular garter stitch method that had actually gotten patented. And so I went to the school library and I checked out a copy and I flipped through it and I thought, oh, that's really interesting. And then I just kind of set it aside. And for about the next 15 years or so in my career, I mostly did technical documentation. And let me be straight with you. At the end of a day of technical documentation of parts sheets and engineering schematics and photos and a whole lot of technical details, my brain is just like, I can't do anything really complicated, but I could do modular garter stitch. I could go back and forth, that's pretty simple. Like, that's about as much brain capacity as I had left at the end of the day. And so most of what I knit for the last 20 years has been modular garter stitch. And then in about 2015, I really got to thinking about the book again. And so I ordered myself a copy on Amazon, and it only cost me $150. And it's actually here. I'm using it as a weight for a lift for my phone. $150 on Amazon. I think they're up to like $900 now, if I remember correctly. But mine was only $150. And honestly, my copy is the nicest one I've seen anywhere. The dust jacket is amazing. It's in absolutely pristine condition. And so I have my own hard copy now. But before I did that, I actually went to my local library through an interlibrary loan, and I checked out a copy. And I think there's like 27 copies available in the United States, and I was able to get one. And like just rent it for a while. And I scanned in the whole thing page by page. And let me tell you, that took a good month because it's a really slow process. And then I ran optical character recognition on it, and I added all kinds of bookmarks, and I went through and I like color coded it all for all the different charts to match up with the patterns and the instructions. And I spent probably a good 6 to 12 months just massaging that document to make it really, really nice, really easy to use. Do a keyword search on it, and you can just like instantly flip through the whole book and very quickly find what you're looking for. So it's awesome. And honestly, I reference my digital copy at least a couple of times a week. It's amazing. So during that process, I also went through and, because I had already scanned the document, I uploaded the individual patterns to Ravelry, and not for download, just like, to add them to the database. And so I took the pictures from the book and I added them into the Ravelry database, along with, there's like an intro section for each pattern about like the amount of yarn that you need, the size of needles that you'll use, and like the basic, 1 or 2 paragraphs of instructions about how each piece is made. And I entered all 74 patterns from the book into the Ravelry database, and that took a few months. Because keep in mind, this is just a part-time thing that I'm doing for fun. I still very much have a regular business that I run doing technical publishing, and so all of this knitting stuff, it's got to like kind of fit in. Kind of like on the back burner because it, for like 6 years, it was just something I did for fun, for no pay. And frankly, it just cost me money during those years. And so I went and I put in all the charts. I put in all the patterns into the Ravelry database, and I started a number knitting group, and I had a few, I had some people that were interested in it. But this was long before a lot of people really started their own YouTube channels, and so I didn't know of another way to connect with people. And slowly over time, like, the activity kind of dwindled, and then it was just me kind of posting my progress on the book. Every time that I would put up a new pattern into the Ravelry database, or I would do make a new chart, or if I reached kind of like a milestone in the progress, like I extracted all the text from the book and I put it into my publishing program, InDesign, and I retypeset the whole thing. And every time I had a milestone, I would just like post in the group, like, hey, here's what I'm doing. And then after a while, a few years, it was just me, just me by myself in the group. And I got a little discouraged, and so I kind of took a break for a bit. But then I think it was like the beginning of 2020 when somebody mentioned it. I think the first person to mention it, I mentioned number knitting, kind of like in the broader knitting community outside of me. The first person to mention it that I heard of was Dr. Lily Marsh. And she was interviewed for an 8-part series on a podcast called Yarns of Yinhu. And I'll put a bookmark to that in the description. But Dr. Lily actually did a PhD, and her area of study was Elizabeth Zimmerman and her influence on the wider world of American craft, specifically her knitting. And it's a phenomenal interview series. It's based on her dissertation, a dissertation about Elizabeth Zimmerman. Oh my gosh. But I'll put a link, and I highly, highly recommend that you go and listen to that 8-part series. It's amazing. So a couple months after that, Vivian Hawksborough was interviewed on the Fruity Knitting YouTube channel. And the first thing she did in her interview was bring up the number knitting book and talk about how it influenced her work. And then a few months after that, Roxanne Richardson mentioned it on her YouTube channel, which was like blowing my mind that all these people suddenly, not really suddenly, but suddenly after I'd been, really deeply invested in this project for like 6 years, that it started becoming talked about in like the wider knitting community, which was it was shocking. And then, and as I was going through my knitting library at one point, I opened my Principles of Knitting book. And in case you don't have a copy, you should get a copy. I think the first one was published in 1988, but then it went out of print, and it was really, really hard to get a copy, very expensive on Amazon. But then in 2012, another edition came out, and I have the 2012 edition. And number knitting is actually mentioned on page 379 as a footnote. It's in the modular knitting section of the book. So go grab your copy of Principles of Knitting off the shelf, go open it to page 379, and you'll see it's mentioned there along with Domino Knitting by Vivian Hawksborough and Horst Schultz. I apologize if I mispronounce either one of their names. So every time that one of these other like kind of big time people in the knitting community mentioned number knitting, I'd like freak out, and I'd text my knitting friends like, oh my gosh, have you heard? Or sometimes they'd be like, Kelly, have you seen on whatever website that they're talking about number knitting? And I'd go scramble and look at it. But it really gave me a big boost of encouragement, because I worked on this by myself for a long time, just alone. I didn't really have a knitting community. I kind of live in a rural place, and all the yarn shops are like kind of far away. So I didn't really have anyone that I could share it with that was like really like they got it. And suddenly there was these like big time knitting people talking about it, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's other people that like legitimately get the importance of this book and this method and the work that this one particular author did. And you may be like, who is this woman? I've never heard of her. I've never heard of this book. Well, Virginia Woods Bellamy, she wrote this book, and it started as a correspondence course originally, and then she compiled it to be published as a book. And so the whole thing is developed to be worked from front to back. And so if you, hold on. Hello?
We've been trying to reach you concerning your car's extended...
Nope. And so this method is designed to be used, it's designed to be worked from front to back, beginning to end, like you would a correspondence course. And for that reason, there's like these little these little tidbits, these little nuggets of just absolute gold, amazing, like earth-shattering information that are just like kind of casually sprinkled in. And unless you worked through the whole book from front to back, you would totally miss it. And so my original intention with this book was to just redraw the charts. And to read it, the samples, like just knit 74 pieces, just. But as I got further into it, it became apparent why some of the things were photographed the way they were in the book, and some of them, like why they were styled a certain way. Like, why was this piece styled flat on the table? Or why was this model wearing a pencil skirt with the sweater tucked in at the bottom? And like, why was the model hunched over when, you know, you could hardly see what she was modeling? And as I knit through all of those different patterns, it became apparent, oh, I know why these photographs were a little wonky or a little sneaky, in an effort to try to cover up any potential maybe misfits, or like if it didn't fit quite right, or like if the garment only came in one size. And so it became very clear to me that I couldn't just republish the book and not edit the text, not expand the sizes, and just present it with charts as is, because that wouldn't really elevate the book as it should be. And just because there's some patterns in the book where they're only offered in one size, or maybe the fit wasn't quite right, it doesn't take away at all from the genius of what Bellamy came up with. So I started releasing a few of the patterns one by one, and still holding on to the full copy of the ebook and not releasing that. But then as I was doing that, it became clearer to me that I needed to get help in this endeavor, because I've been working on it for, like over 6 years now. And the more people that I get involved in the project for test knitting and for sizing and for instruction and feedback, the more it helps make the patterns better and more accessible for people. But also it gives me encouragement, because if you've ever worked on a long project alone by yourself, it can get a little discouraging if the finish line is like way off in the distance and you never know when it's going to be done. And so having people come around alongside of me is super, super encouraging. And so I guess what I'm hoping is that for those of you that are interested in vintage patterns or modular knitting, or like really ingenious knitting methods, or all of the above, I would love for you to come along and join me in this effort. And we can all learn and work through this book together, because my ultimate goal is to republish the book in like a bigger, better, grander format, with some new patterns, but just to like make this available as a whole, work with all of the new charts and everything. But I'm going to need some help with that, with test knitting. And I do know that I've priced the book at $74.99, and I know that some people have had some concerns about that, because it is on the higher end for an ebook. So the reason I chose $74.99, if you try to find a hard copy format of this book, it'll usually range, like you might be able to find one now for $250, but I've seen them as high as $900 on Amazon, which is like outrageous. I mean, it's awesome if somebody was willing to pay $900 for the book. But my ebook is priced at $74.99. There's 74 patterns in the book, and it is a 274 page book, and so it's got a lot of content in it. And Bellamy's writing style was very, she was a poet, so her style was very terse, I think is a good word. she wasn't very wordy. And so what normally, like a normal modern day knitting author might take like 6 or 7 pages for a pattern, she might do it in like a page and a half. And so there is a lot of content within her very brief, succinct paragraphs. But think about what you'd pay for like a modern day knitting pattern on Ravelry. Probably between like $4 and $7 for one pattern. This book has got 74 patterns in it, and so it's like $1 per pattern. But also, one of the reasons I priced it the way I did is because I want the people who get this to like not just get it because it was cheap, because it definitely hasn't been cheap. It's cost me a lot of money and a ridiculous amount of time. And so I want the people who get this book to like really, really value it and appreciate it and understand the weight and the time involved in this. And I think that's that price point will definitely meet that requirement. But I know that not everybody has $75 to spend on an ebook, and I totally get that. But here's what I've been doing with my pattern testers. If you will knit a single pattern from the book, any of the ones I have up in my my Ravelry or my regular website shop, knitswag.com, if you just knit one of them and then send me pictures and post it on social media, I'll give you a 50% off coupon code for the book. I think right now I've got the mulberry bush Afghan up in my shop. I had priced it originally at $4 and then I put it on sale for $1. I forgot to take it off the sale, so it's $1. So go and get the mulberry bush pattern. It's a mitered square Afghan. It's amazing because it's knit concentrically. Mitered squares knit concentrically. It's awesome, and it's the foundation for the Lambs and Butterflies blanket that's actually on her patent application. So go and get the mulberry squares or the mulberry bush Afghan pattern for $1. Knit one up, post pictures, tag it and me on social media, put it in your Ravelry project page, and I'll send you a coupon code for 50% off. So that'll save you like $35. And if you want to get the whole book right away and you don't want to go through all that, or it's not important to you to have the 50% off code, awesome. The book is available both in my Etsy shop and my regular website at KnitSwag, and I'll send you a personalized copy of the book with your name on it. So thanks again for joining me. I have so many things to share with you all, and honestly, I'm not super comfortable naturally in front of the camera, so this whole thing is a big stretch for me. That's kind of why I've been putting it off, but I thought I might as well just dive in and share my knitting with you, and I look forward to you sharing your knitting with me as well. Now, if you have any particular items in the book that you have questions about, first go and look in the Ravelry database. You can see all 74 patterns are up there. If you have questions about any of them, like have you knit this, or what are your thoughts on this, or whatever, let me know in the comments. That would help me very much to decide what to talk about next, because I've knit about half of the patterns in the book, and they're amazing. And so I very much would like to share them with you. In the meantime, I'm going to start sharing the content from the book, kind of in the way that Virginia did in her original book, correspondence course from front to back, and she started with squares. And so the first thing I'll talk about is squares, and then move on to triangles and mitered units after that. So thanks a lot for joining me, and I look forward to knitting together with you. Have a great day. Bye.